All right, we'll just go ahead and get started here. Sorry for the brief delay, but here we are. We are back with another planning stream here on twitch.tv/lorelink RPG. Thank you all for waiting. Basically, we were experiencing a slight delay as I basically scrambled and had to take care of a couple things which popped up just last minute. So apologize for the slight delay. Woo! Yay! Basically, thank you, Paul Havitz, for the gift sub to 2020 site. As always. So we are here. What words flowing from my mouth at a normal speed. I will calm and speak quietly and precisely. We are here today to talk about Twilight Sword, in particular the Twilight Sword Beta. I see that exclamation mark slow. Now I'm terrified. We're here to talk about the Twilight Sword Beta. As you can see very clearly by the large work in progress stamped on the front of this PDF. Twilight Sword is the newest TTRPG from Two Little Mice, who are the creators of Outgunned, which we have covered previously here on channel, as well as Household, which is a little bit closer to this game. But they are Italian, basically authors. They have created this. I really enjoyed Outgunned. Household looks nice and pretty and great, and I haven't gotten the chance to play that one as well. Oh, awesome! Basically, and so they're back with basically what they call a homage, a love letter to a take on getting Legend of Zelda into TTRPGs. It's an interesting idea. It's taking on Legend of Zelda, Secret of Mana. They say Final Fantasy, but I think Secret of Mana might be a slightly better take on it. And kind of the idea and the basically ambiance of basically like Ni No Kuni or Studio Ghibli films, that idea of basically an adventure which is more than just going into a dungeon, beating something up, coming back out, then going into the next dungeon, going down and basically beating up that next thing. It's definitely a little bit more inspired probably by Breath of the Wild and basically Tears of the Kingdom than your original Link to the Past. But there's a little bit of that in here as well, I would say. If you want a true JRPG, TTRPG experience, I'm probably still going to recommend Fabula Nova. Wow. Fabula Ultima. Fabula Nova is something completely different. Fabula Ultima, which is basically if you're looking for epic boss battles and things like that. This borrows a lot from what they did with Outgunned in terms of their games are about smoothing it out and basically smoothing out the TTRPG process, the game playing process, and making it a lot more faster mechanically for a GM at the table. Being able to sit down and play an adventure and roll basically without necessarily having to draw out 6,000 mini maps and other things, and coming up with lots of stats and enemies and things like that. It really wants to simplify it down and streamline it. And so it's the idea that you are basically the base idea of the game is that it takes place in this. Let's go ahead and start building things out here in Lorelink. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change up some of these category names to better fit with what they have here. We're probably going to change location up to region, as that's the term they use. We'll change locations to regions. Still stays as a scene, still fully shared. And then we're going to go back to categories. Let's add some new categories here for some other concepts. Bosses. They're here. They're interesting. They're not going to be quite as big as in aid items. Okay. Basically, bosses. The Scourge is the big bad. Actually, I might just... Let's just rename villain to Scourge. Because Scourge is essentially your big bad of the game. It's the idea of the fact. So how Twilight Sword builds out its world. It's the idea of the fact that you have a land that has many different biomes and diversities and things like that, and it's being beset by a great evil, TM. Basically, if you're trying to compare this to basically Link to the Past, it's going to be... I should get this off the screen so people can see it. What I'm doing. It's going to be... there's the thing. It's going to be the idea of, in Link to the Past, your Scourge is Ganon. In Final Fantasy, probably 1 is the best... the best version of it, the best kind of take on it that compares to this. Chaos is your Scourge. You have many different biomes which are being beset, but Chaos is your overall bad guy who is causing all the problems. So we'll add that. Let's see what else we're going to add. Quests. Quests are probably a scene. We'll do that. And landmarks are another big thing. Oops, I want singular on that. Thank you. Landmarks are definitely a scene. And I think last we're going to add chests, just because of the way that chests work in this game. We'll add that as loot. Okay, so now you can see we've got all these categories up here across the top, which are going to help us fill things out from the way Twilight Sword put things in front of us. So again, the idea is you have a Scourge who's going to be your big bad, your Ganon, your Chaos, and he's going to be basically sending out monsters and things like that, and various regions of the world are going to fall under what is known in this game as despair. And the idea is that your characters, your champions, as the game calls them, are setting out to rid the world of despair. And basically they're bringing hope, to be more precise about it, to use the more game terms. And so every region is going to have its own despair that is going to be removed by the player characters, that's going to be replaced with hope. And so, but that isn't necessarily, it isn't just to say straightforward, oh, there's despair, that means you have to go punch something in the face. And basically every time you do, you're going to go punch something in the face, and hope goes up by 1 every time you punch something in the face. Hope is a much more open-ended idea. It's going to be the idea that things have gone badly for these regions that you're looking at, and because of that, there is overall despair. So let's go ahead and track despair and add things to track that. So campaign despair, that's going to be a number. Radia is the name of the land. Thank you. We'll create a new one for hope as well. That's going to be a number as well. We'll make that index, second index. Oh, we need to share those with players. Let's edit that one. Need to edit that one. So that's now shared. Cool. Okay. So we'll be tracking despair and hope throughout the game with that. And what that means is, actually, despair is going back. Despair is not tracked at the campaign level. Despair is trapped on a regional by region basis. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. Boop. Just like that, it's gone. So hope it basically, so each region has fallen under some kind of whether it's monsters attacking stuff or just a general miasma of the world is basically making things gloomy. Crops aren't growing. Basically, children's toys have been lost. Basically, children have been lost, depending on how extreme you want it to be. People can't build their homes because they can't go into the forest to get the lumber they need to build their homes, and so their family is suffering because of that. It's this idea that something has happened to this world, and there's a general malaise around the world, and your job as champions of hope is to basically help restore. Resize this just slightly so that you can see the full. You can see everything we're doing here. So, excuse me. So it's basically what you're basically, but it's the idea of the fact that basically what Twilight Sword is doing is giving you a mechanical reason to help people, to go on NPCs, but it's not just basically it's helping NPCs, it's defeating monsters, and it's also a third thing, which is basically kind of the interesting mechanic for the game, which is closer to what you think of when you're thinking of like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom, the idea of exploring, basically helping to remove despair. The idea of the fact that you're going around the world and you're finding beautiful sights. You're looking, you're finding what they call landmarks. Essentially, you're getting to the top of that mountain. You're finding that beautiful valley nestled into the mountains. You're following the river to its source and seeing what lives there. You're discovering a beautiful pond or pool that's hidden in a forest. And it's this idea that these things, basically finding the beauty and the nature of the world, is what also helps to remind people what they're fighting for, that there are things still worth living. Basically to encourage the people to fight back against this scourge, which has basically kind of overwhelmed the kingdom. And so it's interesting from that standpoint, because it's the idea that it isn't just necessarily that you're going to set up a bunch of dungeons and basically be like, okay, go punch these guys. Okay, cool. You've punched enough people in this place that you rescued the cat, or you basically got the cool item, and now you can pick up that item and go to the next area and move on. And you're not really, people in towns are just there to be the things you hand off, stuff you found in the dungeon that you don't need, so that they can give you money in exchange, and then you can buy bigger and better things to hit the next things in the dungeon with. So it's basically, and so basically that's what basically kind of is taking what is unique out of Breath of the Wild and being like, hey, what if, basically let's bring back that joy of discovery, let's make it mechanically interesting and worthwhile to see what's over that hill. If your GM describes a mountain and you're like, cool, let's climb to the top of it. So your GM describes a forest, you're like, cool, let's go into it and explore. Let's look for things and let's go find things. You're basically your thunderstorm, basically a thunderstorm covered basically swamp or something like that. What's in there? What's basically, was it always a swamp, or was it something else? Is there something corrupting it? Let's go find out and basically dig in and kind of try to figure out basically the world that your GM puts in front of you, so that you can basically give your basically so your players can basically interact with the world you're creating. You have an excuse to create interesting places and things like that aren't just yet another set of hallways and passages or ruined castle or something like that is just there. You can just be like, yeah, there's a reason to go explore the ruined castle, even if there isn't necessarily reports of there being a basically being a big chest in the middle of it, or a dragon you have to go fight, or something. There certainly can be. There's nothing stopping you from doing that in this game. In fact, if you want to run this as more of a legend, basically a link to the past, you're probably going to basically stress a little bit more of the going to beat up stuff. Because like Link to the Past were mostly there was exploring, but it wasn't for its own sake. It was for basically you'd go exploring because you wanted to find the next dungeon, you wanted to find the next piece of heart or whatever. You also can use landmarks to be part of your storytelling. Like I mentioned, the ruined castle or things like that. This idea of landmarks could be basically just as easily, it could be basically a series of ruined lighthouses that you could use, that you could hunt down to basically bring back light to an area or a world. And so there's a challenge to it. There's get to the top of the lighthouse, figure out why the lighthouse stopped providing light to the area, go retrieve the things you need to do that. So you could set up a quest of basically just as easily like bring back land. And basically you can set that up as a quest. And so basically quests are they actually give them a mechanical thing. They are meant to be a series of deeds that the players do so we could actually, if we wanted to fully track this in full lore link, we could do this. We could add deeds as well. We'll call them a scene. Let's actually share those. Okay. So basically, bring back light to the land could be a quest that you give your players. And then you could basically create some deeds that go along with it. Such basically the first one might be like, could be as simple as cleaning out, basically finding the lighthouse could be an exploration. Basically could be a deed, and that's going to be more of a exploration. You could also have deeds of helping the old lightkeeper. Let's spell lightkeeper correctly. Back to the lighthouse. And then we could also add a deed for basically there could be defeating the lights here. Let's actually call it clearing out the weaver nest. All right, let's go ahead and link those deeds in. So, weaver nest, lightkeeper, and finding the lighthouse. Okay. Basically, all of these are some of these are going to be combat, like clearing out the weaver nest is going to be more of a combat-based one. Helping the old lightkeeper back to the lighthouse could be a combat one, or it could be just a basically helping them basically having a conversation, moving this person from point A to point B, basically making sure that they stay safe, basically exploring ahead, clearing out pitfalls and things like that. It could be more of a conversation between you and your players over how do you want to escort this old man without making it we have to drag this person across every map to make sure he gets to this place safe. Make it more interesting. Make it about camping out on the road between here and there and making sure he's comfortable and basically foraging for food and what do you cook for dinner that night, and making it more of a conversation about basically overcoming there's a sudden downpour. You're basically, as you're in the forest and now you're getting lost. Can you actually find can you keep finding your way to the lighthouse? How do you keep him with you? As you keep doing that, how do you keep him safe? How do you keep him from catching a cold? Again, doesn't have to be a particularly violent encounter like it's a D&D game. You can make it about whatever you want. And this is somewhat how basically I talk a lot about when we do initial campaign designs, that picking your system basically should be secondary to designing what world you're creating. Because you're going to want to have an experience in mind when you basically start off building your campaign world, because what that experience you want your players to have needs to be backed up by the system. If all the system does is say, hey, players, the only thing you really get rewards for is punching stuff in the face, then your players are going to go out of their ways to punch things in the face. If the only reward they get for punching things in the face is more ways to punch things in a face, they're going to be more likely to do that. D&D basically slides a little bit more into this. 4th edition especially kind of slid into it. 5th edition, there's still a decent chunk of that. It's not quite as bad as it is in 4th edition. That's kind of the trade-off between 4th edition and 5th edition D&D. 4th edition had some really great combat and mechanics and roles. And then 5th edition did a lot of, let's kind of mix that, and basically what do players want to do both. So they gave them some options to do other stuff. But they also removed a lot of the cool tactical combat and things like that 4th edition kind of had, which was which is both its downfall and its reason why people still support 4th edition. But in any case, you want to look at your system and want to be like, hey, I want to make sure that this system that I'm picking is going, if I want to pick a system which is going to be about helping people in the world, discovering landmarks, going out and exploring, doing good deeds, bringing hope back to despair. I want a system which is going to support that, because you could run the idea of a Final Fantasy or a Breath of the Wild game in any system, but you're going to basically, if you do it in D&D, if you do it in Pathfinder, if you do it in Fabula Ultima or something like that, you're going to be doing a little bit more heavy lifting, because you're going to be like, oh, okay, I have to give the players rewards. I have to mechanically break down what exploration is like. What does it mean to help people? How do I help my players keep track of that? You're probably going to do things like end up implementing something like hope and despair to give your players something to measure against. And so that the advantage to using a game system like Twilight Sword is a lot of that work is going to be done for you in Twilight Sword. Like the hope and despair is already there for, hey, I want to give my players something they can look down at and think and say, hey, are we succeeding or are we failing? What do we need to do more of? They can come to a region and you give your players explanations and things like that as part of the introduction to this new area that they're in. you basically at the end of it, you reveal that this area, basically that this region that they're in. So let's go ahead and do region. Let's grab one of the regions here. Actually, let me start with the world map. Because I want to do the world map first to make my life a little bit easier. So, images, and I have uploaded a bunch of images to make my life a little bit faster and easier, so I don't have to spend a lot of time uploading stuff while you guys are watching. So here we go. So basically, that's the idea of like, here's the world map for Radia, and they've broken it up into regions. And so each region is going to be its own, and I'm going to create them as children. I'm going to grab them from the book really quickly. You plan ahead, inconceivable. Yes, that's part of the reason why I was late, is because I got too into actually trying to plan ahead and get things set up that I lost track of time and ended up being late for the stream. Go figure. Amarillo Valley. Let's add more region children. Plains. I can just do it this way. Landed Coast. Morgova Forest. I need to remember to specify the world map as the parent. Good. Add region. Zavosta Gully. They had some great names for stuff. I'm not able to talk to you right now, whoever you are. Assuming you're actually a person and not just a bot wanting to harvest my kidneys over the phone. And the Grata Desert. And let's add one more. I like how I'm adding it this way rather than adding it this way. Oop. Because there are so many, we have so many different ways in LoreLink to make sure that you can basically connect, be able to add things from wherever. The primary today is just last minute canvassing. Ooh. All right. I don't think I added all the regions. I need to associate more regions. I linked all of them, but I didn't necessarily. Right. Which ones am I missing? So, Greta Desert is missing. The parent. And I'm doing this so that I can basically pass notes down if I need to, because we'll talk about that here in a second. It's the Armor Valley, Radosio Castle, Lumina Plains, Morgova Forest. I'm missing Pen Mountains. Nope, that's all I wanted. I wanted parent. World map. Save. Okay. Making it available as a fillable sheet for VTT. Not exactly VTT. More basically making it so that making it easier for GMs and things like that to basically fill things out in advance without having to spend a lot of time duplicating stuff. Basically build a penguin doing a PDF. Basically, so the long-term goal of LoreLink, and we've talked about it in the newsletter, and so I could talk about it on stream now that we're actually moving more towards it. Is the long-term goal of LoreLink is, again, the idea behind LoreLink is that we want to make it available for to make GM's life easy as possible. Because one of the biggest hurdles for GMs doing and basically being GMs is always going to be the idea of the fact that, oh, it is so much work to be a GM. And so we want to basically to make that easier. And so one of the ways to make that easier is, let's make it so that if I come into LoreLink, well, we want LoreLink to be system agnostic because we want LoreLink to be, because there's always new games and systems coming out, and you may need to do your own thing, and you want to come in and you want to change stuff. But we want you to be able to possibly come in and be like, hey, I'm running Twilight Sword, and basically some of the stuff I'm going to be filling out here and doing in advance, I want to basically, as soon as you say Twilight Sword, for all of that to get filled out in advance. I want all of that to be, I want them to come in and be like, hey, I want to do Twilight Sword, and all of these categories pop up and all these things are available. So if you're wanting to run a campaign by yourself, you can come in here and everything will be set up for you in advance. Hope will be added to the campaign. Despair will be added to regions. That reminds me, I actually did do something slightly wrong, but we'll talk about that in a second. Not wrong, but something that could make my life easier. But basically for right now, what I'm going to do is add all of these regions to the map. That is 4. That's Moldova. And so what I'm doing right now is adding hotspots to, is that the gully? Yeah, that's the gully. I'm adding hotspots to this map to make my life a little bit easier, so that, oh, but this is, of course. Basically, so now each of these regions is basically highlighted, so I can click on it and be taken to that region. And so I can, when I'm playing the game, be like, hey, I want to dig down on this particular region, and I can click on that region and get taken directly to it. And then I can see all the information I have on it there. Something I'm going to want to do is region children. Actually, I don't want region children. I want custom fields. So this is where despair goes. So this is regional despair. So that's shared with players. So now I've created that. Now I've added that despair. If there's anything else I wanted to add to it, because they go into a lot of details when you're talking about, basically they add interesting areas and things like that under it. Like for example, for this one, Radiosa Castle, it's the central area, so it's got despair question mark, right? Despair unknown. Because this one is the, let's see, we'll go ahead and copy out some text here. I'll make sure it doesn't. There we go. And then underneath it, it has its own child, which is called the Fortress of Evil. Now, note, this is just kind of the example world that they put into the book. If you're wanting to run this for yourself, you could create your own giant world and things like that. They're just filling it out, basically. They're creating one that you could play with, because again, a lot of the idea behind Twilight Sword is you want to run this as quickly as possible, because it's ideal to risk. This really feels like a system that wants to be run with newer players. Basically 3 groups of people: younger players, so your, like in my case, nieces and nephews who have played Legend of Zelda, and you're wanting to get them into role-playing games, and so you're like, hey, let's do a Legend of Zelda game on, oh, nice, thank you. You could do a Legend of Zelda game in basically in TTRPG form, and be like, yeah, you guys get to be Link, and you can be Zelda, and you could be a Goron, and you could go out and explore and find cool things. And so basically you could use this system to basically recreate that. Or for younger players, newer players who are like, I've played some games, basically, sure, we'll give TTRPGs a try. And you're like, okay, let's ease you in. Let's make it easy for you to play things and things like that. We're not going to throw a bunch of rules at you. Or people who have just gotten burned out by role-playing games because they're like, every time we play D&D, basically, we play a bunch of things, we slaughter a bunch of monsters, and then we go home and then we slaughter a bunch more. I want to do something different. I want to do something simpler, easier, basically more hopeful, more interesting. And so you're going to want to the best way to do that is you're going to want to give them a system that isn't going to bog them down in a bunch of details, make them go, I'm just doing D&D again, this time with slightly different colored paperwork. And so basically the idea, what they've done is they simplified a lot of things and made it straightforward. So that when you're introducing it to players, you're not going to give them necessarily a castle, which is a dungeon, which is 30 layers deep. And they're going to you've drawn out. You're going to give them a dungeon, and then you're going to kind of talk through some of the challenges and puzzles and things like that they find in the dungeon, and you're going to kind of run through it maybe somewhat linearly. Or if you're doing more Breath of the Wild, a dungeon or shrine in Breath of the Wild might be a single puzzle that you're going to put in front of the players and have them work out and use their skills and basically use their basically putting their thinking caps on and puzzle it out, and they're going to use their abilities to kind of get hints or pull things off or do things or maybe even brute force solutions if they can't figure out the puzzle. But you're going to kind of present it as a quick challenge and not necessarily something which is going to be, okay, for the next 3 sessions, you guys are going to be making your way through this little shrine thing. It's going to be a one thing. Okay, you find the shrine. Cool, this is what's in the shrine. Here's what you can get out of the shrine. And it might be just as simple as, you get a little bit more. Basically, you've reduced despair in the region by clearing out the shrine. It might be that you give them a small reward for clearing out the shrine. It could be that there's an NPC who lost something and things like that. And so it's an end destination that you basically, it's and part of one of those deeds you created, and so you want to help them basically figure it out and move quickly through it. And so basically all that to say, basically the regions and things like that are going to be relatively straightforward. They're not going to be vastly complicated things. And so I created this with the despair, and then I'm going to create a template from lore. So I can, because I want to keep that custom field. And basically, by default, templates have 2 modes currently. Basically, there's some changes coming in the future, but for right now, templates essentially have 2 modes. They are both for, I want to create something and I don't want to keep copying all of the text about it over and over and over again. And they're also a way of copying field layouts. That field layout is going to be broken off into its own piece here soon. It's one of the next features we're working on in order to work with the idea of incorporating third-party marketplaces and things like that. So basically the idea is that basically if I purchase the Twilight Sword basically add-on for LoreLink, it would basically automatically add regions and add despair to every region I create. Templates right now are doing that double duty, so they're kind of doing 2 jobs, but that'll change here. That'll change here soon. So basically, but I've captured that. Basically, I captured that despair as a public field now, so I can keep it and change it if I need to. But now, if I go to other regions, like Radiosa Castle is the one I just created, like Tolongo Coast. I'm going to put that back on the world map, save that. There we go. And then I'm going to basically, if I wanted to basically link it to that template, basically right now it's called the Radiosa template. I'm going to change that name. I'm going to look at templates. I'm going to come here. I'm going to call this, I'm going to call it like radio region, like that. So now that's the name of the template. So now if I come up here to like Celesta Galley, I need to move into the world map. We'll save that. But now if I create it as a radio, if I link it to a radio region, I'm going to change its description, and I'm going to capture, this is which one, the gully. I'm going to grab the gully's description. Whoop. I'm going to put that there. I'm going to save that. And it starts with default. I'm going to unlock that, default of that. Now, basically, you can see I didn't have to add despair because the region has despair as a custom field built into it. So I got that automatically. And so I can basically quickly bring that across without having to recreate that. Where that would be even more useful, let's go with creatures. So basically, creatures in Twilight Sword, again, basically the idea behind Twilight Sword is making things relatively straightforward and interesting, and basically relatively quick. So your creatures aren't complicated. They look like this. So basically, they've got it's a very small stat sheet, and those six things you see there are their attacks, and they're numbered like that because they are. Basically, you can they're there as an aid to GMs. You can have them act randomly, and you can roll a die, and basically the mob does one of those 6 things. You can do things you can keep things really simple and just have the monster do its first thing. Its first thing is going to be its relatively straightforward attack that it has. So these guys are sneaky little guys, and so they'll backstab people. They'll get up on your back and stab you in the back, but they have to be close to you to do it. And as you can see that they've got basically each monster has those same things, but you could roll randomly and have them do a random attack. You could just do the first one if you want to be like straightforward, or just pick one of them and be like, nope, they just always do this. That's all they're doing here. You can also have the monsters go in rotation. They start with this one, then they go to this one, then they go to this one, they go to this one, they go to this one, they go to this one. Note that some of these don't have rolls necessarily associated with them. Like Backstab just does 1d8 damage to somebody. Club has a roll. That's what the number in brackets means here. It means they actually have a chance to miss. But a lot of these just happen. And it's a lot like the closest thing I can associate it with is Dragonbane, Dragonborn. I want to say it's Dragonbane. Can't believe I forgot that name. But someone in chat happens to remember it. Basically, which is a classic European game, which is another game which does a lot with, we want games to be snappy and fast. And I love this method of stop making your GMs. There's a book on my shelf, like The Monsters Know What They're Doing, and it's all about how to take your monsters up a level and make them incredibly tactical and working in groups and ambushing your players and basically all those things. And it's great for if you're wanting your game to feel more realistic, more lived in, if you're wanting to give your players more of a challenge in combat. And again, it's for games where you've given your players a bunch of buttons which say punch people in the face, and so you want to have unique and interesting situations so they could try pressing all their different buttons to press people's in the face, because you gave them those buttons, they're going to want to push them. This one, basically, you don't have as many of those buttons, and so combat can be a little bit quicker and faster. And so the GM isn't necessarily, if you throw 20 bogoblins, because hey, like Legend of Zelda, they just show up and they go and they come rampaging at you. You don't want to spend a bunch of time going, that one's going to circle around behind you, and then this one's going to climb up on the cliff, and this one's running over here, and then you're just bogging things down. Basically, as your game progresses, it's not interesting. It's a tactical simulator, and basically, again, you're going to spend 40, 50, minutes on a combat, when what your players want to do is we rush the group of goblins, and just like in Legend of Zelda or Final Fantasy, the combat's over relatively quickly. Basically, monsters do dumb things. The players, being smart and brilliant and cool, will wipe the floor with them, and you move on. And so the idea of, hey, let's make monsters just do stuff, and that stuff just happens. And basically, players can react to it and do other stuff to it. But for the most part, it's just, oops, basically, the goblin swings at you. Oh, you took some damage. Okay, moving on. You wipe back, and you smack back, and you kill it. Cool, it dies. Not fat, basically, not complicated, not basically a lot of AC checks and things like that. It's just, it's there, you hit it, it dies. And basically, these get more complicated as you go up. Like this, you can see this. They have things like, they have passive abilities like this. They'll have things like, okay, these attacks can't be parried, and these attacks can't be dodged, and things like that. You can get more complicated. So it's all basically all these things. But again, you want it to be basic and straightforward. And so we're going to quickly create a template for. We're going to just call we'll call it the mob template. So let's go ahead and save that. We'll go ahead and open up the mob template. And we're going to basically add some custom fields here to match what we've got going across. So we've got that first skull there. So let me shrink this a little so you can still, yeah, you can kind of see, you can see me adding custom fields. So let's make sure we look up and know exactly what each of the stats are. What do they call the stats? I think these are, yeah. They do one thing, which I will have to say that they've made a choice, and I think it's somewhat unfortunate, and maybe because they're Italian, I don't know. But they do basically, like it happens in games, it's the idea of the fact that the mobs can have variants. Basically, again, much like in early video games, to save on money and basically save on our sprite sheets and space in your game. You just basically, okay, this is a nastier monster. It's a blue version of it, and it's got slightly different stats, and it's nastier because it's a blue version. They go through multiple colors, and then they have the top ones being black versions of them. And I don't know if I would have chosen that color for reasons. There we go. Monster cards. Hip. Balancing the counter. Basically, this is okay. That's the threat level. So we have a threat level. And it's a number. We'll make the threat level not shared with players. Confirm. Basically, we have hearts. Monster health. Not health J, just health. I'll make that next. Confirm. And then they have shields, and they have armor and stamina. They're also numbers. And then last is stamina, which is basically your special ability bar. Basically, well, how many special abilities can you use? Okay. All right, so we've created that mob template, and now we could go into creatures, create creature. Let's create this Bob-Goblin. I'm going to pull it off the screen here so you can actually see what I'm doing a little bit more. Yep. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to link the mob template in. Cool. Now I'm going to rename stuff. Bob-Goblin, no, it's Bo-Goblin. Because, yes, they knew exactly what they were doing. And we'll add an image. That's what a Bo-Goblin looks like. We'll do that. we'll basically copy the Sneaky Havoc Razors. That's the C. K is the Marvel character. Then we'll for the description. We'll grab their stats. Yep. Come on, work with me, Adobe. Adobe's like, I don't want you copying out of me. I want you stuck in me forever. But you're a pain to deal with, and you keep adding horrible AI stuff. We'd rather not have to deal with that. But what if we came up with a better way? Huh? Okay. We'll go ahead and bold those fields. Oops. Might as well use the formatting built in. Yep. Oh, you're not actually there, that's why. Like, why are you not giving me 3? There we go. Charge. Pile up. Make these things bold. Just to call them out. Actually, should definitely be in there. Okay. We'll go ahead and save that. And we'll go in and we'll have those custom fields laid out for us. And the threat level of these guys is 1. Their hearts are 7. Their armor is 0, and their stamina is 0. Cool. So now basically when I'm looking at this, basically if I'm looking at this in our what you normally would use it when you're actually playing the game, you've got this basically straightforward. Obviously I've got some formatting issues because I copied it in relatively quickly, but you've got that number right there, so you could do that. I could also set this up if I wanted to make this a little bit more interesting. Basically, wanted to make it a little bit easier on myself. What I could do is instead go back to creatures, go back to my template, and since I know basically how this is working, I could throw in a table like this. Actually, let's keep those in. Oops. Yeah, insert a table. We'll call it number, name, and description. So now you can see we've got that down there. So the next time I created another creature using that same template, let's create something new here. Link it to the template. And if I call it this is going to be a wyvern. Because I want to create a weaver just because of the fact that I like the way that the wyverns look. They're just absolutely goofy looking little suckers. We'll see them a little bit more close up here in a second. Let me save it, actually get in there so you can see this on the larger screen rather than editing it here. But yes, the wyverns are these absolutely goofy looking fellows. I mean, look at those guys. That guy is not a threat. Is it actually spelled with W-E-E? I will double check, but I think yes, it is actually spelled W-E-E-V-E-R-N. That's great. Because I mean, look at that. That guy doesn't get a cool Y in his name. He's not cool enough to get a Y in his name. He's just a dorky little guy. He's just here to have fun and murder you. But now that I've set it up like this, I can come in here and edit this. And for his attacks, I can basically gnaw. Let's do its number first. Oops. And then gnaw. And then his text is let's go to the next one. it would basically would be fire breath. And it is on a 10. And it deal 1d10 fire damage. Near damage. They also suffer burn for a round. Over 1d4 rounds. Cool. And so you can see I could lay it out that way. So basically it looks much nicer. Basically it's better organized. It looks nicer when I'm looking at it here. It's basically still keeps that table formatting. And I don't have to rebuild that table every time I basically come in here because it already have that text already in there, which is the advantage of using templates to pre-fill fields for you. And basically, if you want to do that. Now, if I want to basically, for example, we talked about with the basically the different colors of goblins, so they're like blue goblins or like regular goblins, but slightly nastier. Basically, I've got to be careful there because I almost just tried to slip into Dungeon Crawler Carl basically voice there because I've been listening to those audiobooks and they have a very distinct, the AI, the narrator does a great job of having a very distinct tone. And I can find myself almost falling into new achievement. But yeah, you can totally roll the table though. Basically, there is nothing in this rule set would go against it. Again, that's kind of the great thing about this is basically he's going to be attacking. Basically, he's going to be attacking and doing things. But basically, if your players want to do something different, they can. Basically, you can change up the story. So basically, like we talked about with these guys would be part of basically the deed that you had to clear out the Weaver nest and so I could come down here to lore, and I could link in the Weaverins here. And be like, oh yeah, they're Weaverins, you're gonna have to fight them. Basically, they built a nest around here. Or I could also basically you can basically be like a nest of, and I could then also, if I wanted to, I could call out basically this way as basically in the area around the light. I can spell whether by force. Diplomacy, I can spell. Diplomacy, things like this. So you can build that out like this, and so basically I can also add it to it. I can also create an encounter called the Weaver Nest as well. And basically, because they're all encounters in basically Twilight Sword are either of the mind, they're probably going to add this combat range image. Just so when I'm running an encounter, I have something which gives me a quick representation of what near, close, near, and far are, so that I don't have to keep consulting back to the book to try to remember what each of those is. But now that I've done that, I can come back in here, and I can link the scene. Basically, this would be the deed. Calling out the Weaver Nest. That's one of the places this could happen. I can link the monsters in. I'm going to say there are 3 of them. And basically, if I wanted to link loot, basically, I haven't created chests yet. Because how they do treasure, they really do a quick and dirty way of doing. They're like, hey, there are different types of chests in this world, much like there are in the video game. Basically, and again, this is making me. Basically, the idea of There's a bronze adventurer's box. Wait, no, wrong game again. Bronze chest. Video games are video games the world over. Basically, there are, like, they have charts for what chests have in them. And so what I would do is I would do bronze chest. And then they have a table here. So, and it's a D12. So let's add a quick table here. I only need part of this. Let's say D12. And then I say contents. And then I grabs the chest loot here. Boom. I grab that. Then I'm going to quickly do some editing here. Let's do this so I can just grab this. Yep. Nope, I do want the double space there. Grab all these quickly, move them down. And the best part is I only have to do this. And then at the top, I will say, I think it's Zen. I can't remember what they have a cute name for what their money is. It's not rupees, it's like zennies or something like that. I think it's like that. Because it's not rupees, it's not risky, but now you can see if I save this, I can link loot and I can say these guys have 2 bronze chests. And I can add them in just like that. I can save this. I can go here. Now I've got this table right here. So if I'm looking at it, again, I've got all the contents right up the bat. Zin, that's what it is. Zenny is a different one for a different game. So many Gil, Zenny, Rupee, so many things. Thank you. 4D5 is an interesting number. I'm going to change that because that's not how numbers work. That's not how dice work. There we go. So you can see basically, so you can have that directly right there. It lets you know that basically what encounters you've stuck them into, and then you can quickly build this out. And so you have this encounter, you have all this information really easily accessible for you. Because again, a lot of this stuff with is it Eyeglasses website? There are a ton of basically ton of charts and things like that basically in the Twilight Sword book. And I'm sure that the book itself, basically there's the main book and there will be a book just for Radia. Again, if you're wanting to run this in a quick and easy fashion, basically picking up these books is going to be relatively quickly a way of basically running one of these types of games, because they've done a good job of being like, hey, randomly generate a landmark. Here are the steps for randomly generating a landmark. Basically, if you want to just randomly generate a landmark, go into Google Earth, go into basically Shutterstock or something like that. Find a stock photograph of some cool wilderness area. Basically, again, stock photography is the best way of doing this. Don't bother with AI or something like that. Just find stock photography, because you're going to find lots of cool places that already exist on Earth that are going to look cool and interesting and have neat details and things like that, which are out there, which you could just slap onto basically a region or a location or a landmark, basically in Lore Lake, and then you can just describe that. Basically, have fun describing that site to your players. It's going to be a little bit challenging, because you're going to have to get used to describing things a little bit more fully, because you want to pull your players into the game. And so you may want to, rather than doing it off the cup, maybe make notes in Lore Link about how you want to describe stuff. But once you get better with it, your players, basically, you describe something and your players like, we want to go to that mountain that you randomly mentioned in this description of this region. You're like, great, cool. And so you're going to come in here and you're going to click that quick create button. And you're going to create a new landmark, which is going to be mount tall place, and you're going to grab a random Shutterstock image or basically stock photography image of a mountain, and then you're going to pull details out of that photograph and you're going to describe it. Basically, there are trees and things like that. Maybe there's a small forest on this thing that your players are going to have to navigate through. Is that a river coming down the mountain? Cool. Basically, that's a way your players can pathfind. Maybe throw some monsters up there to give them a challenge or something like that. Maybe put a hermit's hut on there and it's going to be an NPC that they're going to have to talk to. And he's got something he wants. Maybe something as simple as, hey, go into those woods and harvest some of this. Or go rescue my cat, which has gotten lost in the woods, or something like that. And it's going to be really quick and really basic. There are going to be lots of charts, which are just going to randomly generate that for you. Even the NPCs have basically a really quick generation that you can throw at them in order to be like, okay, cool. Here's a new NPC. Basically, here's some pre-made ones. Throw it out there, and it'll be basically really quick and easy to do. And you're just going to record those quickly into Lorelink, and then you're going to associate them whatever you're looking at. Basically, you're going to associate them with the session that they're playing, so that they can see, hey, this is where all of the things come together. And this is where so if I make this session one, to wrap this up here, as it were, as we're a little bit past time. But basically that encounter I just created, I can throw in here, Weaver Nest. Basically, I know they still haven't done the deeds, so basically they're still working on that quest, so I'll go throw that quest in here. Bring light back to the land. And then they're going to put the steps in here that they need to do. And so it's going to be clearing out the wyvern nest. It's going to be the lightkeeper. It's going to be fighting the lighthouse. And it's going to be basically helping the lightkeeper. Cool. I'm going to throw those in here. And so now I've got the quest and the deeds, and I can just mark off the ones as they do them. So they're going to be like, okay, we need to do some things. And maybe they do these two first. And then they realize, oh, there's a weaver nest on top. We have to deal with that later. And so now that I've built that out, I can move this one, which is incomplete, and I can move the quest and clearing out the weaver nest, and I can move that to a new session or copy it to a new session and start my next session notes with what quests and deeds they're still working on. I can throw any NPCs they've dealt with, any monsters, basically any encounters can end up down here. I can throw that all together so that basically I have a quick and easy way to reference everything. Because again, with a game, especially a game like this, you're going to want to keep things flowing. You're going to want to keep things interesting for your players. You're going to want to be able to create things on the fly, because it's all about basically just exploring things, finding things, figuring out new ways. Like, basically, I'm thinking, oh, the Weavers are a combat encounter. You're going to have a weird, silly kind of fight with them. And then one of my players, basically with 20, is going to be like, hey, they look goofy and dumb and I want one as a pet. And you're like, you want what? And you're going to have to figure out what that is like, what the step is. And this, again, I haven't really talked about skills or stats because the system itself is straightforward. You have basically to pull up the character sheet. Let me pull that up really quickly here. So this is basically, you've got image for your character here. You've got names and things like that. Here are your skills and your stats. They're all just one thing. And then you've got some debuffs that can hit you. You've got your health. You've got your stamina, which is your ability to do stuff. You have your boons, which are, every system has a way of mitigating your players just can't roll today. Boons are Twilight Swords, but they're much, much more powerful than just a simple hero point. They're very much they're not get out of jail free, but they are a way of getting basically try to remember all the things you could do with boons, because they are really powerful. Basically, I'll talk about that in a bit. Basically, but you got equipment, you've got inventories and feats and spells. That's it. So your skills, basically all of your skills are just right there. They're straightforward. You're not doing a lot of rolling. You're rolling a d12 for most things. And you're trying to basically your skills are going to go up. And you're going to want to do better than them. Basically 5, 6, 6, 7, 8, 9. You're going to roll a d12 and try to get under that. There you go. And that is your system. And basically, that is it. You're going to keep going, and you're going to, basically, if somebody gives you advantage, you're going to roll 2d12. And if somebody gives you disadvantage, you're going to roll 2d12 and take the worst of them. And so it's going to be, you want things much like Outgunned, you want this to keep moving. And they included the one rule, which I really like from Outgunned, which is great advice for GMs, to basically, especially those who want to play a game that doesn't get stuck. Failing forward, which is the idea of the fact that don't let your games stop because your players fail to roll. Either don't call for a roll. I saw someone ranting about this earlier, which is on, I think, Blue Sky, which is, hey, if your players are coming into the room and your cool thing is behind them finding the safe hidden behind the painting, if you make them roll perception checks and then they fail, your game stops, or they leave the room, or you have to basically don't call for the roll, pick the character with the best perception check and nudge them in the right direction. Or if you're going to call for a roll, basically use the fail forward method that they talk about here, which is, hey, even if you guys don't figure it out, something basically that just puts you at disadvantage. Like, okay, nobody made the roll to basically made the roll in order to find the safe behind the painting. But what that means isn't that they don't find the painting, is it that they bump into the painting and it rips and tears. And so now there's an obvious sign that they've been in the room if they're trying to be sneaky. Or if you're building up to a combat encounter, they knock the painting out the wall and it lands on somebody's foot and they take damage. Cool. The safe is there. Basically, they found the safe, but now they took a little bit of damage, or they've ruined their chances at being stealthy and they have to figure out how to repair it. Or something else along those lines. Keep the game moving forward. Don't make the rolls succeed or the game doesn't work. Because with a video game, yeah, you basically, maybe you'll flail around the room for a bit, but it feels really boring to flail around the room for a bit as players, unless it's a really key puzzle that you're trying to figure out. That's part of the fun, is doing that, is basically piecing together things and doing it. In that case, yeah, sure. Basically make rolls to basically succeed or not, but don't punish players for not being able to figure out your puzzle because the dice don't work. It doesn't work. It isn't fun. And so, again, basically, so the reason why I haven't talked about this is because that's it. This is pretty much the entire system right here on these 2 pages. There's some stuff with combat and things like that, but it's all pretty much roll and get under it, or basically roll and get under your whatever you're trying to do. Because much like Outgunned, they want things to keep moving, keep flowing. You want to engage your players and keep them interested. And that's why we're basically with LoreLink, basically putting it in there, keeping it organized, getting your notes ready and prepared means you can keep doing that in the game. So that you don't stop and have to look something up on a map or flip through this PDF and find something, because you've seen me do there's a lot in this PDF. There's a lot of, even without all the art, there's a bunch of stuff in here. And if you're like, oh, right, I need to find the Bogoblin things, you're going to come all the way down here. I need to find the boss stats. They're here. Oh, what's in this region? I have to flip up to the maps here. What's that equipment do? Et cetera, et cetera. Organizing your notes ahead of time is going to save you time, and it's going to make you be more able to do what you want to do, which is playing the game with your friends. Basically getting them involved, getting them interested, and keeping them involved and interested, and keeping them wanting to keep looking over that next hill. And because if every time they try to go over that hill, you stop the game, they're going to be like, oh, we don't want to go over that hill because you're going to sit there and stare at us for 5 minutes and panic, and we feel bad every time we do that, so we're just going to stick to the path. You want your players to feel like, oh yeah, we can go over that hill because he's going to come up with something wild, basically really quickly, and record it, and it's going to be the same every time we go over that hill, because basically keeping notes during the game is going to make your life a little bit easier as well, being able to quickly just be like, hey, that's what this basically, oh, I need to create a landmark, cool, and quickly record it so that your players know, right, that's the same thing which was over this hill last time, but not, okay, last time it was Mount Tall Place, this time it is Mount Gevarest, because I came up with a different name for it. You're like, wait, which one is it? I've got something in my notes here about Mount Tall Place. Oh yeah, that's actually Mount Gevarest. I just changed I forgot the name last time, and so it's different now. It's basically going to pull them out of the game a little bit. So basically, it's not basically, it shouldn't be adding to your work. You're wanting it to be a little bit more work so that your time during the game becomes less stressful for you. This should be something fun and interesting and doing this game. So never think that you have to do a bunch of work up front, like, oh, I have to do 600 pages worth of note taking up ahead, is what he's saying. Sketch out to your comfort level. Sketch out to the level, basically, if you're a better improviser, basically leave things as sketchy and basically as a little bit detailed, but basically have them there so you can keep names straight and basically and things like that. If you're someone who loves being super detailed, but you're terrible at improvising, then yes, do the work up front so the session doesn't feel like this giant dreadful thing of, oh, I have to sit down and think of all these things up the fly and I'm terrible at it. Do the work in advance. Make the session enjoyable for you. You are, as a GM, you should be having fun as well as the players, because if you're not having fun, your players are very quickly not going to be having fun either. It's going to be joke about the forever GM and being shackled with that, but the forever GM should be someone who is really happy to do it and enjoying it and getting something out of it and being fun and creative and telling cool stories and seeing players interact and being like, oh, that was awesome, remember when this and that, things like that. And someone who is basically getting powered up by whatever the basically, I'm thinking of a word and I can't, but basically it's getting positive social vibes out of it, so that they want to keep doing it, so they keep being enjoyable, because that is going to flow back to your players, and then that will flow back to you, and it's a really cool feedback loop. So all that to say, that basically, because we're running, actually no, we're not running over. I just read the time earlier. Basically, cool. We are actually just about on time. Awesome. So, and we started a little bit late, so basically the wrap up here can bleed over a little bit. It's fine. So, all that to say, that's what I would do. Basically, that's what I would do with Twilight Sword. And basically, do I recommend Twilight? Basically, would I recommend Twilight Sword? Basically, for those three groups that I discussed earlier, 100%. Basically, if you got some people who are interested in Legend of Zelda and something like that, what I would do is I would recommend getting this, running it as a one-shot before investing in it as a full campaign with a group, to make sure that the group you're playing with wants to have this kind of experience, and it works good for you as a GM. Basically, do a small quest, do something relatively short that could be covered in a night. Like basically, most likely when they release the full version of it, they'll have some quick start adventures. Outgunned usually has done a really excellent, Outgunned, Two Little Mice have done an excellent job of including those cool, interesting, quick starter type adventures, which can give you a really good one shot and some really quick sample characters to play with. Check those out. Maybe possibly, basically it gives you a good handle of how the system works. They'll throw a bunch of different types of challenges at you. And so that you can figure out, oh, this works. My group enjoys doing this. My group doesn't enjoy doing this. Basically, they are definitely more combat heavy versus exploration heavy, or they're definitely more exploration heavy versus combat heavy. Basically, using the one shot to figure that out would be a great way of finding out that this is going to work for you. But again, those three groups, basically people who are brand new to role playing, people who are younger, basically are interested in role playing and are basically have a lot of experience with video games, and that's going to be kind of their first entrance into what a fantasy RPG will look like, or people who have gotten burned out by D&D and they want to do something more open-ended, they want to do more exploration, they want to do more helping NPCs. Like, one of the great things I didn't even really get into is one of the interesting mechanics is when you reduce a region's despair down to 0, one session they say the next session should just be a party. It's just all the characters and everyone they've met in that region and everybody just getting together, and you have a recap party episode where everyone has a great time, and you get food and drinks and things like that. What else is there besides D&D? Exactly. Basically, that's a fun mechanic that you wouldn't necessarily think of for D&D, because D&D doesn't have that. But this is like, hey, you reach this, you finished it, have a party, have a good time. basically let them meet the people they've helped along the way and give them encouragement to keep doing it before they move on to the next region. And so it's a great, basically, it's a great system that adds these like fun mechanics and things like that are just going to be like, oh, that's cool, that's interesting. That's basically, that is not something that basically is something that the system helps you along with, rather than if you want to do it in D&D, you have to cut it, you have to make it up whole cloth. So that's my recommendation for what you're doing that on basically. And so that's it. Basically, Twilight Sword. It is currently basically it's still in technically pre-order late pledges. Like TK was saying, basically was saying earlier. Basically, it is coming soon, July or August. Basically, I think the final PDF version comes out in July, and I think it's scheduled to be shipped in August. So you can basically, which means around July or August, you should be able to pick up the quick start guide, and be able to give it a one shot and give it a try. So keep an eye out for that. Basically, Two Little Mice is the company that make it. If you look up Twilight Sword or Two Little Mice, or it's available from Free League Publishing. Basically, any one of those three, you'll be able to find this from. And if you want the note-taking stuff that we talked about here, basically in LoreLink is your campaign management tool. It is system agnostic. So if you say, oh, you know what, Twilight Sword doesn't work for me, and I want to try something like, well, I want to do something more modern, like Outgunned. Basically, we've got it. Basically, you can check, basically LoreLink works great for Outgunned. If you want to do Pathfinder, if you want to be more buried in details, or if you want to do something, basically a lot of the Stone Top, or basically some of those bigger, more complicated, tons of NPCs and complicated worlds out there. Basically, LoreLink works with all of those. If you want to see us examples of us using it and planning those out, check out our YouTube channel. We've got a ton of different, basically the systems link there will link to a bunch of systems we've used. Our YouTube channel is us discussing with a bunch of different designers and things like that over how their games work and what interesting new ideas are out there in the world of TTRPG, and how LoreLink can help you with those, as well as planning out both one-shot campaigns and even longer multiple turn campaigns, campaign with younger players, first-time GMs. All of that stuff is available on our YouTube channel. And if you want to basically find out what we're doing next year on this channel, July, it's a busy month between basically we've got Origins, which we just got back from, and we've got Gen Con coming up at the end of July. So the channel is going to be a little bit lighter because basically myself and my co-developer, as it were, are going to be spending a lot of time actually basically building things out and getting things ready for Gen Con in August and basically in July. And so, yes, we'll be at Gen Con. We will be at... There's a booth number, which hopefully Tony in chat can pop that up. There we go. Hey, we have a button for it. Cool. Yeah, we're 2862. We're in the Entrepreneur Alley there in the back. So stop by, say hi to us. We have cool swag. So basically, we'll basically be glad to see, basically stop by, say hi. So basically, but because of that, the streams this month are going to be a little bit lighter. Basically, we're doing a couple video game streams. We're doing one more planning stream, and we have one more indie creator stream coming next week, I think. Oh gosh, I need to get on top of that. Basically, we've got the Campfire, which is one of basically a cool game from a Irish designer. I believe they're Irish. And that's next week. So come back and check us out there. So if any of those things sound interesting to you, you can check us out. Basically, you can keep an eye on us by following us here on Twitch. That will give you the little pop-ups and things like that, letting you know when we go live and what we're doing. You don't think he's Irish? Okay. I think it won an award at an Irish convention, and so I'll have to deal with this guy. I will fall on my sword if I misread, basically incorrectly guessed it from that. But his name seems quite Eastern European. Yeah, true. In any case, Visky, you want to find out, follow us here. If you want to, Visky, if you want to give us a Visky, hey, thank you for doing this. Visky, obviously, subscribing to the channel is always appreciated, but never required. We don't run subscriber-only streams or anything like that. But if you have Amazon, Twitch, Gaming, Prime, Sub, whatever, you could use it to take $5 out of Jeff Bezos' pocket and put it into ours. Basically, whereas with Jeff Bezos, he'll probably spend it on a yacht, and we'll never spend it on the yacht. Maybe a yacht splat book or something, like in-game yachts only. So all of this, so that's always a great way of supporting us to say, great, if you're interacting with us over on YouTube, you're catching this on the VOD over on YouTube, subscribe, comment, like, all those great things to boost our algorithm over there are always appreciated and free. And if you want to keep track of us outside of that, you want to find out cool things like what conventions we're going to, what cool other things we're doing, and other cool Kickstarters and things like that. The creator is originally from Poland, but currently lives in Ireland. I was mostly right. But you can check us out on Blue Skies. Basically, Blue Sky is Blue Sky. So you can follow us there. And basically, you'll get cool updates from Tony about, hey, we're doing this cool thing, or we're talking to this cool person, or this cool person has a Kickstarter. And last, if you don't want to do any interaction with social media, the newsletter link that went by earlier is a great way to find out about cool things that we're doing in just a great digest form. And basically that gives you a summary of everything we've done in the past month, things coming up the next month, updates on our development, all the cool stuff. One place, one email, once a month. Simple as that. Simple, straightforward, and easy. So I've gone through all of the things. So basically, hope basically everyone watching has had a great time. Basically, thank you for being great chat and interacting and talking and contributing, and basically emotes and things like that. So we will catch you all later. Have a good evening.